This is Big Tasty Sports.
Yanni's back with me to talk some DFS this evening, maybe morning by the time you're hearing this. But Yanni, thanks for jumping back on, man. Always fun to talk some more football as we head into another week.
I appreciate it as always. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right, we're going to do the normal dance here and just go through position by position, kind of talking tiers, but we'll kind of branch out and talk stacks and different things as we go. As always, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. What's your favorite stack? Where are you looking in DFS this week? And also make sure you are following at the Bet Crushers and at Yanni_bet. Already good content for this week on bets, DFS, all that kind of stuff coming out as always from Yanni. So Yanni, let's just start off as we always do with the quarterbacks. And we were talking before we jumped on. I think there might be some places that seem obvious this week, but let's start with sort of that top tier. But let's say like $6,000 and up. Let's start there. Where are you looking? Who do you want to build around this week?
There's certainly a lot of options this week, and I you could make arguments for a lot of the top guys on here. I think an interesting one, and I'm not recommending playing him, but I think an interesting one is CJ Stroud coming off the game that he had. I don't necessarily like that matchup this week, so I'm not on him, but I think he's interesting. I think Burrow, on the other hand, is actually interesting, although I know T. Higgins is going to be out, so that maybe limits that a little bit. I know I think mentioned Dak Prescott. I have a little bit of concern with Dak, and not that I don't think he's going to produce, but I wonder if this game gets out of hand, how much he's throwing the ball in the second half, and will that limit him? So for me, when I look at that top tier, the guy that I really like is Jared Goff. He comes at a little bit better discount. Obviously you could go the other way with Justin Herbert as well, but I don't like Herbert nearly as much as I like Goff in this matchup. I think that, you can throw on that Chargers defense there. Goff really has all his weapons for the first time in a while, as far as receivers go. So I don't know, at 6,400, I think he and a potential stack there is pretty appealing to me.
All right. I like this. We feel more strongly about different people, maybe like the first time ever in doing this show. So that's kind of fun. And I mean, you named most of the guys that I would look to. I think the thing that just concerns me with Goff, because I was thinking about him, is just that home road split stuff for him. I get a little nervous playing him away from Detroit. Now it should be a good spot for him. And I agree about him having that full complement of weapons. So I don't mind it in that sense, but that's the thing that's made me hesitant there. I'm going to go away from Stroud. I think people are going to flock to him this week because of what he did last week. And we talked about this on the other show, but I think he's good and he's going to have some more great weeks, but I don't think he's repeating that performance from last week. So, so for me in this top tier, I really like Joe Burrow, but I feel like it's too obvious. So that's what concerns me. Even with Higgins out, and Chase actually is questionable, and it sounds like he's actually really questionable. I kind of feel like Burrow is getting in a groove, though, and I think what that does is it just opens up some really cheap plays who are going to get a disproportionate amount of work. So I don't mind Burrow, even if one. It would probably be nice if only one of those guys sits. It'd be nice to keep Chase with Burrow. So I do like him. And then the other one for me, I share your concern about Dak Prescott. That's something I was thinking about too. Two things that I wonder with him. Number one, are lots of people going to play him? Because the Cowboys are going to be an obvious spot to go to one way or another this week, whether it's through the defense, the run game, the pass game. I think people are going to want to get some part of that. I feel like if the game stays close, obviously he can potentially put up stats in the second half. If it's a blowout, I just wonder, can he get 3 passing touchdowns in the first half and put up a bunch of yards and almost like cover his price even in 3 quarters, instead of a full game of work, I think is on the table for him. So I guess as we talk through it, I kind of have some hesitation with almost everyone. But Burrow is probably the one that I like the most in this top tier.
Yeah, can't fault you there.
All right, let's look at the bottom half of this position then, under 6,000. Are there people here you think that we can build around, maybe even anyone that's worth pivoting to off of some of these more obvious selections?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I don't plan on spending up for a quarterback this week, because I like several in this lower half here. And you kind of mentioned it. You said you've got a little hesitation with all, on all of those higher priced guys. And I'm kind of the same way. At least one, if not more of those top guys, they're going to go off. I mean, we know it's going to happen. Do we know for sure which one though? Like we said, there's some questions around all of them there. He's burned me this year already, but I'm potentially going back to the well with Geno Smith here. I mean, it's just such a good matchup at home. And, I think that the stack is right with his top two receivers here. I don't know that this is going to be a huge Kenneth Walker run game. Maybe it will, but I just kind of have a feeling this is the game. And again, Geno Smith has burnt me already this year, but I think that this could be a great spot for him. So I definitely like him and a stack opportunity. And then the guy that I really like is just below him at 5,700, and that's Brock Purdy. And, my logic here is basically this. A month ago, Brock Purdy could do no wrong, right? He was the next Tom Brady. Fast forward 3 weeks, and now it's like, oh, should Sam Darnold be the starting quarterback for that? No, I mean, come on. Like, how do we pivot that quickly in 3 weeks? I mean, it's crazy. I understand. It's what have you done for me lately? But his salary had started creeping up over the last, whatever it was. And then now I think you're getting a huge discount getting him at the $5,700 here. Plus, he's getting Deebo Samuel back. It looks like Samuel's tracked to play this week, so he's going to have his full complement of weapons. And the Jags are better at defending the run than they are the pass. So, and we've talked, I don't think anybody stops the 49ers from running, but if they slow them down a little bit, I think Kyle Shanahan is the type that he'll get McCaffrey out in space on some swing passes. He'll get Deebo, on these little bubble screens and different things like that. And that'll serve as the running game. So I think in this matchup, Purdy at that price point is a value that I like. And the Niners can be tough to stack, but this is one of those rare occasions where I think you can play Purdy as a one-off, not necessarily stack him. Because, that's the other thing with the Niners offense. Who's getting the touches? Is this a Brandon Ayuk week? Is it all McCaffrey? Are they running what are we doing here? So I think you could potentially one-off Purdy, and you could potentially build either a one-off lineup, or if you wanted to, let's just say, stack Metcalf and Lockett, but you don't want to play Geno Smith, you could look at doing something like that. So it's a little, I guess, unorthodox, but I really like Purdy this week.
You're talking me into that one. I'll be honest, I didn't have him starred as someone I was looking to go to, but as you were talking, what I like about it is I think even in betting, you want to try to get teams when they're lower. I mean, we talked about, I bet San Francisco already this week. I don't know if you did, but we talked about it at least. Yep. And because it's a buy low, right? And that extends to Purdy, because I think Purdy shouldered a lot of the blame for the losing, and he hasn't been fantastic in the last few games, if we're honest.
No.
But to your point, that's the time to use him. Not after he's had 4 good games in a row and everyone else is using him too, and his price is creeping up. So I think you're selling me on that. And I will say, I actually really like Deebo this week. I know that's jumping ahead. And it is true. You don't ever know who's going to get the touches. And I wish I could give credit, because I don't remember where I heard this, but I've been paying attention to it now for a number of weeks. Someone had brought up that Brandon Ayuk is much better against, I forget which one, it's man and zone, but it's pronounced between Deebo and Ayuk, depending on what type of coverage a team tends to play. And this week, when I heard them talking about this, it's the matchup where Deebo is more likely to have a big week than Ayuk based on the coverage type that Jacksonville prefers. And so because of that, I do like Deebo at the price point. And to put him with Purdy at that price, I think is a great call. So I love it. I did have Geno written down. Here's the thing with the Seahawks, man. they're going to struggle when they go against really good teams and really good defenses.
Mhm.
They're not a great team. So for them, I mean, did I expect them to get blown out as badly as they did against the Ravens? No, I did not expect it to be that bad. But them getting beaten soundly by the Ravens is not shocking to me. But when they play other mediocre or below average teams, this is a good offense and they can go off. And so I'm definitely with you on Geno. And those two receivers are not that expensive, so you can put that stack together, no problem.
Exactly.
Yep. So I love that with you. The other two that I'll just throw out there, and these are ones that I don't have in lineups right now, but just were ones that I was at least thinking about. One is Will Levis, just because he's throwing the ball all over the place, man. It almost reminds me of CJ Stroud a bit. Not that he's been as good as Stroud, but I just mean the way that they're releasing him to actually throw the ball some, and he's pushing it down the field a little bit more. So, and he's 5,300, so it's cheap. And the other one to me is Heineke. We talked about this matchup going against Arizona. It's not a good defense. And so if they let him throw the ball at all, he could end up paying off 5,100 pretty easily, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought those up because I really love both of those. And I think you could even throw Baker Mayfield into that same grouping with those three.
Agree.
They are economy players that all have a real opportunity to have good weeks. So I'm with you on all of those. If you want to mix it up a little bit, if you're playing multiple lineups, I mean, and those are the type you can stack again, a Mayfield and a Mike Evans. You can stack a Will Levis and DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, there are options out there that allow you to, pay up at other positions there. And all three of them, if you include Heineke in there, they all have very favorable matchups. And of course, Tennessee and Tampa against each other. So you could potentially run them back and forth there.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that Tennessee Tampa game is sort of a high risk, high reward game to stack up. Because, man, if they do cut the offenses loose and it gets going, I think it could be a high scoring game. But Tampa Bay and Tennessee are not traditionally high scoring teams.
Well, so I will tell you, I went back and forth and I ended up betting the over in that game. But but I really questioned it though, for what you exactly just said, which is Mike Vrabel, Todd Bowles, are they going to allow that to happen? But I think what we're seeing, and I think we saw it with Tampa last week, they don't have, and we've talked about it, they both have good players on their defenses. The Titans have a few good players on their defense. The Bucs have a few good players. But overall, they don't have the horses to run the type of defense that I think Vrabel and Bowles want to run. I think by default, and especially when you look at this matchup, both of those teams, the Titans and the Bucs, are better against the run than they are against the pass. So when you look at that, it's like, is Mayfield going to be forced to pass because they can't run the ball? They don't necessarily run the ball that well to begin with. If they struggle there, and then on the opposite side, if they're gearing up and saying, okay, we're gonna use our big hogs like Vita Vea to slow down Derrick Henry, like you said, Levis could be chucking it around there. So I think that this game, the more I look at it, would I be shocked if it were 20-17? No, but I definitely think it's leaning more to that 30-27 type game, more like we saw with Houston and Tampa a week ago.
Man, I'm right on board with, a number of the points you made there. I was thinking, yep, this game is likely to get funneled toward passing.
Exactly.
Because of the strengths and weaknesses of each team. So, if that passing can go well, and if one team gets up, then the other team's chasing, and away we go.
Exactly. So, yep.
All right, I like it. Man, that stacking that game up might be worth one lineup for me this week, I think.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I think some interesting stuff on the quarterbacks. Lots of good stuff to consider. Let's move over to running back. And here, let's just do the same 6,000 and up. I know, obviously there's a big difference between Bijan Robinson, at least right now, and McCaffrey. But let's take that whole tier and let me know what you like there.
So when you look at this, I mean, you always have your weekly question with McCaffrey. You're always going to pay a premium, but he's pretty much the most consistent thing in fantasy football. So this week I'm not, even though I do expect him to have a nice game. I think, kind of as we just mentioned, it could be a little more through the air. This could be a game where maybe he doesn't get a whole lot of rushing yards per se, but he's obviously a touchdown machine. He scores every game. And I think this could be one of those games where he has 7 catches for 80 yards, So I think he's definitely playable, but I think if I'm paying $9,200, I want it to be a dream matchup. And I just don't know that this is a dream matchup. So I'm probably going down. You see a lot of the next guys, Eckler, Kamara, Barkley, Henry, they've got red next to their opponents there. And I think it's merited. I don't know that any of those guys are going to have huge games. So for me, I am going down a little bit further. I know Pollard's generally been disappointing as far as fantasy goes, but if there's ever a week to put Pollard in your lineup, I feel like it's this one. I feel like they're going to try to get him really going, and he should be able to get going in this game. So I think you can consider him. ETN in this week, it kind of reminds me a little bit of McCaffrey on the opposite side here. He's kind of become a little bit of a must consider. But I don't necessarily love the matchup. I feel like, coming in, the San Francisco defense is going to look a little bit better than what we've seen. So I don't love him there. What I do like here, though, is a little bit further down. I think David Montgomery, I know he's coming back, so I'm a little hesitant there just because how much are they going to work him back in? But I have a feeling that they're going to run him a lot in this game. And I think that this is the type of game where we saw the Lions on primetime and he was really successful. So I think you can consider Montgomery. But I will tell you, probably my favorite that I have here is Aaron Jones. And he's coming off an injury. He played a little bit last week. He did a couple good things. He didn't look great. But this is a good matchup. This game to me is going to be an old school. Both of those coaches are going to be trying to run the ball. I don't know that either are going to necessarily throw the ball that well. And that Pittsburgh defense can be run on. And I think Jones is the type of back that gives them problems. So I think he's kind of a sneaky player at, what is he, 6,500? It's 6,500. I would not be shocked if at the end of this week, Jones leads the league in for the weekend. I'm sorry. For the weekend, leads the weekend in rushing. I would not be shocked in this game. So it's definitely a high, like you said earlier, high risk, high reward. I think that Jones could absolutely strike out here if he's not fully healthy, if that hamstring's lingering, if, whatever. So you got to play it with caution or know going in that that's an option. But I think he's worth a shot here because I think he's set up to have a really good game this week.
I don't hate that one. I had Jones sort of on my second tier of people I'm considering. And the reason for me really is I just don't like the Packers offense much at all right now.
Sure.
But I think a point on the positive side for him, though, is at this point, we're finding out that at least right now, Jordan Love is not going to be able to carry this team to victory. Right. I think at best, he doesn't make mistakes that kill them. And so I think that Aaron Jones is the offensive weapon they need to lean on. It's almost a little bit like Saquon with the Giants, right, where it's like, man, this isn't a great offense, but if somebody's going to have a good day, it's probably going to be Aaron Jones. He's decidedly better than Dylan is. And Jordan Love's just struggling to throw the ball around. So I definitely don't hate that. I'm going to consider that more. So I have a short list for running back this week, and you talked about some of them. McCaffrey I'll consider depending on what else I have in a lineup. It's sort of like if I have the money for him, I never totally hate to go there.
Yeah.
But it's not as good of a matchup. Montgomery was one for me. I like playing Montgomery this week quite a bit. Yes, there's a little bit of risk of him coming back, but has Dan Campbell ever been one to be shy about running his workhorse running back? And even the Jahmyr Gibbs had some good games, and they've said, it's going to be maybe around 50-50. I want to be like, bullshit. You're running David Montgomery into the ground.
Yeah.
And at least it's at least very likely that if there are goal line carries, they're going to David Montgomery, which for DFS is a very good thing. So I like Montgomery a lot. And the other one I like here is Joe Mixon. Part of the reason I like him is I kind of want to get involved with that game, and I think you can run on Houston some. And so he's just a little bit cheaper way to get involved. I wouldn't pair him with Burrow probably. I really wouldn't. But on his own, as a piece from that game to get into other lineups, I don't mind Mixon at 6,200.
Yeah, I think we saw Rachaad White he had his best game by far against that Houston defense. So I think Mixon has a similar skill set. He's probably a little more talented than White. So, I mean, he could catch a lot of passes in that game. I think you're right. That's a nice call.
All right, let's do the bottom half. Some running backs we can plug in here who are a little cheaper.
I always my first look is always Brian Robinson. And he's not the 200-yard, 4-touchdown kind of guy. You're not going to get that from him. And Seattle's run defense, up at least until the last week or so, has been pretty good. But at the price point he's at, he's literally almost always like the one quote unquote workhorse who gets the majority of carries out of the backfield, who's not priced that way. So I always at least look in that direction. Now, I don't love him this week just because, again, I don't like that matchup. But I always look that way. But I think this is going to sound ridiculous, but the guy that I really like this week is Najee Harris. And,
I didn't see that coming.
It's crazy because, first of all, you mentioned it. There's probably not going to be a lot of points in that game. Neither of these offenses are dynamic, go up and down the field type offenses. But Harris showed a little bit of sign of life last week. And, he's taken a lot of heat in that Pittsburgh media there. He doesn't run hard. He doesn't. And I think it's maybe somewhat merited, but I think realistically, they don't have a great offensive line. They don't have a good offensive scheme. They don't have a quarterback that people fear, So I don't think it's all on Najee Harris. But here's what I would say. I think that they are going to run on that Packers defense. So kind of the same thing with Aaron Jones. On the flip side, I think we're going to see a lot of carries for Harris here. And I feel like he almost certainly gets a touchdown this week. And I feel like this could be one of his better yardage games of the year. So, when I look and I see under 5,000, I don't know. I just, maybe it's a gut feeling. And look, Harris could have 12 carries for 24 yards this week, and that could be it. And be like, boy, that was a waste. It could happen again. But at $4,900, I just think this is the week that I'm looking at a guy like that. And at this point, we know nobody's putting Harris in their lineup. So if he does happen to perform, you're in a good spot there. So I really like Harris there.
Great point. Let me ask one question about that quick. Would you prefer him to Jaylen Warren? Jaylen Warren's 5,000, Harris is 4,900.
I would, only in this game. I think if in most games you would say, you know what, Warren is a little more of the pass catcher, obviously a little more explosive. They seem to be working him in more. Normally, I would say Warren is the play, but this week in this game, I think that Harris is going to have enough room to get those carries up the middle and get those 5-yard gains instead of 1 and 2 yard gains that he's been getting. I think he's going to be able to do that. And again, I would be shocked if he doesn't get in the end zone this week. I really would. I think he's destined to score a touchdown this week. And then obviously if you could get a second one at that point, you're sitting golden, that kind of thing. So I don't know. I like him there. So,
yeah.
And then, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, talking about playing Najee Harris, and you talked about Aaron Jones earlier. I think that could be an interesting way to get a little bit different. Because like you said, probably no one's playing Harris, but playing those two both at running back, if that game ends up being one where it's probably not going to be crazy high scoring, but if those two guys get the scoring, that could really differentiate you. And I kind of like pairing those two up from that game.
I mean, honestly, and as I look at, I've got a couple lineups right now, and I mean, I've got the Geno Smith, Tyler Lockett, Metcalf stack, and I have Jones and Harris as running back. Okay. So, yeah, I think there are ways if you stack that you can play those guys as a one-off. And I mean, again, we're talking about a $4,900 player. So, not necessarily needing him to have 200 yards and 4 touchdowns, right? It's like if you can get if Harris could get you 80 yards and a touchdown and he's $4,900, I'll take that. That's working into the lineup. So,
for sure.
Yeah, that's it. So, and really the only other guy I really kind of have my eye on that I think is playable again is Tyler Algier. And, I always look to him just because, again, he's at the bottom because he's quote unquote not the starter, even though he gets the same amount of carries that Bijan Robinson does. And we can argue all day long about what an idiot Arthur Smith is for doing this. But at the end of the day, they're needing to score last week and they're inside the 15-yard line. Who's in the game? Algier. And he scored, and I think when you look at this matchup, the Cardinals defense is not good. We already talked about it in terms of Taylor Heineke there. And they're probably going to be winning the Falcons. I mean, maybe not. I will see what Kyler does, but
I bet that they would. So I hope so.
Yeah, me too. So, I mean, I think that if they're winning, there's a good chance he's getting some second half carries. And again, they give him the ball down there at the goal line. He basically gets as many carries as Bijan Robinson. We know he's not as explosive. He's more of the 3 or 4 yard to carry guy versus the whatever. But again, what 4,700 I think is 4,700.
Yeah, 4,700. Yeah.
To me, he's almost guaranteed to get you double-digit points. Like I think he's going to get 40 yards and a touchdown regardless, and obviously anything on top of that is icing on the cake.
Yep. So I have 4 people written down, though I did not have Najee Harris written down, as many people might not, but I do like that pairing. I think that's good. So my 4, number 1, I don't like it, but is Alexander Mattison. With Cam Akers going down, and he was still getting a lot of work anyway. They use him in the passing game. Now you've got Dobbs, who's probably going to have a limited playbook. I don't know. I mean, I don't love Alexander Mattison. It's just like you said, who are the workhorses at a lower price? Yeah. So volume at 5,500. Tyler Algier, I had written down. Another one that I'm watching, and I probably very likely will not use it this week because of the matchup, but is Keaton Mitchell. Yeah, looks like he could be something special potentially, especially in that offense in Baltimore. So 4,700 again. I mean, it's a low price point. It's just he's going against the Browns. So,
but it's funny because we're obviously talking week 10 here, but there's more weeks in the season. So this could actually work out. Let's say Keaton Mitchell doesn't have a great game next week. He's $4,300 or whatever. Maybe at that point, that kind of thing. And I kind of feel that way for what it's worth about Madison. I don't love the matchup this week, although the Bears ran the ball pretty well on New Orleans last week. So I don't think it's impossible to run the ball on them. But Madison, the following 4 or 5 weeks, has some really nice matchups for whatever it's worth. So even, I probably won't play him this week, but he's a guy like next week, the following week, like he definitely is a guy you're probably going to want to consider.
Yep. I totally agree. I had kind of the same thought of maybe he'll be a total dud this week, and then next week we'll get after that. So the other one, and this is, I wouldn't go high volume on him by any means, but is Rico Dowdle at 4,300. I mean, it's 2 things. Number 1, Pollard metrically has not been good this year. And that doesn't mean that Pollard isn't good. But I did hear like a beat reporter and it's speculation, right? At 4,300, you're playing speculation, but speculating that they might start to get Dowdle more involved in the offense than he's been. He's looked okay when he's been in the game, to be honest. And the other piece is what you said. If Dallas is up 30-0 at halftime, are they really going to run Pollard a bunch in the second half?
Right.
And so Dowdle could get some good run in the second half at 4,300. So that's one of those where sometimes I like to have pieces where if I have a lineup I really like and I need to fit someone in, I think there's an okay chance that, like, I don't even think his floor is horrendous this year. Or this week. I mean, So
I hear you, man.
So that's my other one. All right, let's move it along to wide receiver here, and we will start with. Let's just go. Well, let's just do the same. It's fine. 6,000 and up. It's a wide range, but we'll take it. What do you think in that top tier?
I mean, I like Keenan Allen, but I'm not going to pay for him here. I think there will be some points in that game, and I think Allen's kind of the de facto weapon, but I don't want to pay that much. I'm going to go just a little further down. Don't love CeeDee Lamb for what we talked about. I mean, I think he obviously could probably have a huge game, but is he going to have enough volume? Is he going to play the whole game? That kind of thing. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is where my, kind of price point comes in. Very, very consistent. I mean, his floor, you mentioned the word floor there. His floor is pretty much 100 yards and a touchdown. I mean, that's kind of what he does. And I think obviously in a game like this, he could do really well. And then I love Mike Evans this week. And I'm not generally a big Mike Evans guy in DFS. He's often boom or bust. And, a lot of times I just don't want to put that much risk in that he's going to bust. But this week, man, I think that matchup for them against that Tennessee secondary, we talked about that a little bit earlier there. If you do play Baker Mayfield, I think you got to play Evans. But even if you aren't going to get on that Baker Mayfield bandwagon, I think you can one-off Mike Evans here. Tennessee gives up, I believe, more explosive plays in the passing game than any team in the league, if I'm not mistaken. that's what Evans does. He gets downfield and, he catches those balls. So I just think that this is, I feel like every few weeks, Evans has that game with 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. And I think that that's what we get from Evans this week. I think it's going to be a big game for him. From that point there, it's kind of the guys that I talked about earlier, like Metcalf and Lockett. I really like those guys there. There's some other playable guys. I mean, I think you could play Nico Collins, but we saw last week, I mean, he did okay. He scored a touchdown, he was all right, but Stroud spreads that ball around. And again, you kind of mentioned it. I don't know that this is that Texan, big explosive game. So I think for me, it's like, I'm kind of going Lockett, Metcalf, Evans, Brown are kind of the 4 that I would really look at.
We're largely on the same page. The other couple things that I'll throw in, one is I'm not ready to say I'm not playing CeeDee Lamb. I think I'm just still considering whether it's worth even at least playing one lineup with the Cowboys, just because I think the upside even in 3 quarters is very high this week.
I get it.
So I think they could do more in 3 quarters than some could do in a game. So, but I think it's important to note that there is a good chance that their starters won't even see the whole game. I love St. Brown this week. I mean, I said what I said about Goff playing away from home, and that would be my only concern there. But man, St. Brown is awesome, and he's one of my favorite plays in that top tier this week. Evans was one I hadn't thought about a lot, but I hadn't really thought through that Tennessee Tampa Bay game the way that we talked about, and I really like, if you're going to play Mayfield, I'm with you. You play Evans. I mean, he's the big play guy, and he's bound to just have a huge week yet this season at some point.
I also saw over the last, I think it was 3 weeks, Godwin's targets have gone down each of the last 3 weeks. Evans have actually been up. So, read into it. That could just be situationally. Maybe it's time for regression there. I don't know. But it seems like, Mayfield has kind of established that connection with Evans, and, he's not afraid to take that shot down the field.
Yeah, man. Well, that would be good. The other one for me, I already mentioned, is I really like Deebo Samuel this week. So 6,200, I think that's a pretty good price. So that's the only other one I had in that top tier. It's interesting this week. We talk all the time about how every week is different. There are some weeks where I just have, 20 wide receivers down that I'm interested in. And this week I have like 9, I think. So it's just a lower number of people on my list this week, but those are, I would say Lamb, St. Brown, Evans. Oh, and I do like that Seahawks stack as well. I had said, stacking up Geno. So definitely Metcalf and Lockett if I'm going to do that. But, all right, let's just talk about the whole bottom half, maybe, kind of the main plays. And then if there's any bargain basement guys you're interested in.
I didn't say, cause I think you said 6,000, but if you play Will Levis, you got to play D-Hop this week. I mean, he's
$6,000's a good price right there.
It is. I mean, I think that, he's going to get some looks and he's going to get some targets. The question's going to be, can they score? Will he score? But I think there's a good chance. So I think D-Hop, higher end there you can look at. I think Terry McLaurin is considerable here. I think that price point, and I know McLaurin hasn't lit it up. He's averaging, let me see here, 13.5. So, I mean, he's had not a great season, but I think, first of all, they're going to have to throw in this game. And I think that aggressive Seahawks defense actually lends itself to a guy like McLaurin, because I think he could, bust an open play, that kind of a thing. So I don't hate him at 5,800 there. This is a little bit chasing the points. I don't love it, but Tank Dell is, when he's been healthy, he has produced. And, I saw some people make the case that, it was Dell last week, it'll be Nico Collins this week. And that could happen, which is why I don't love Dell. And we've said it 3 times already. I don't think we love the matchup with Houston at Cincinnati this week, but at 5,500, Dell is certainly, an option to look at there. And then, one guy, I'm going to give you 2, I guess, a couple more guys here. Christian Watson has been extremely disappointing. And we talked about this game and said, yeah, these teams are probably going to run the ball. And I do think it's going to be that way. But I don't know if you consider Christian Watson wide receiver 1 for Green Bay, which I do. And I mean, it's arguable. Maybe it's Dobbs, maybe it's Jaden Reed. Who knows? But I consider him wide receiver 1. The Steelers have given up more points to wide receiver 1s than any team in the league. You go back and every wide receiver 1 has torched them, absolutely torched them. So I think, this could be a spot. And again, you're rolling the dice. I mean, Watson's done nothing this year. But at $4,900, if you were ever going to play him, it's kind of like the Najee Harris thing on the other side here. If this is a week that you are interested in doing that, I think it's this week. And then just a couple others just to throw out there. I think he had a quiet game last week, but I think Rashid Shaheed is in play this week. He's kind of up and down, right? He's a little bit of that explosive type guy. But to me, this is a week where I think he could have one of those big plays. But the guy that I really, really, really like here that I think is the value, and this goes along with the stack, is Jackson Smith and Jigba. And I mean, I have kind of been on his bandwagon since the start of the season. And he hasn't really done much, but last week he led their team in targets. So Geno Smith was looking for him. They were able to connect a little bit. And at a $4,100 price point, I think you can realistically stack all 3 Seahawks receivers. Because the other thing is, they don't really throw to the tight end very much. They don't really throw to the running backs that much. And Bobo is really their only other option at receiver there. So I think you could realistically stack all 3 of those guys, which is kind of crazy, but I think it's doable in this situation at $4,100.
Yeah, and Lockett will probably play, but he's been limited in practice this week. So, we'll see what happens with him too. I had thought about it more in terms of if Lockett didn't play or was truly going to be limited, but I think you're right at that price point. I mean, there's no reason you can't play all 3.
Yeah, and I guess let me add one other here that I didn't have originally because I wasn't aware that Higgins was going to be out. But Trenton Irwin, we talked about him when Higgins was out before for the Cincinnati Bengals. The week that Higgins was out, he caught 8 passes, right? 7 or 8 passes that week, I think. He is $3,000. So if Higgins is out and he slots in, like I said, I mean, he caught 7 passes the week that he played. So at $3,000, if you need a fill in there with Higgins out, and obviously if Chase is out, I mean, at that point, I think he becomes a must play, because somebody's got to catch some passes. But I think even if Chase plays, he can slot in there, outside of Boyd and be that option there and catch some passes. So kind of those bargain bottom guys. And then last one, I know I said that with Irwin, but last one, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine there in that game. Again, I'm expecting points there. Treylon Burks is out. I think they officially ruled him out in that game. So I think Ikhine steps in and gets even more snaps than he would have gotten. And he's kind of option number 2. I mean, realistically speaking, in that passing game. So I think at 30, I don't know where he was, 33, 3,400, maybe 3,400. Yeah, 3,400. I think he, with Treylon Burks out, is definitely an option there. If you need those kind of roster fillers when you have everything else that you like and you've only got $3,400 left, I think he's a guy you can slot in there.
Yeah, I hadn't heard Burks was out for sure. Yeah. So that's big because I had Burks written down as at 3,600 as a really good value. So I like playing Westbrook-Ikhine at 3,400 too.
Yeah, I think, and I'm reading his thing on DraftKings, and it doesn't rule him out. But I read yesterday on another site that they did rule him out, that he's not expected to play.
Okay, yeah, that's a big one. So this lower tier of the wide receivers is probably the space where I like as many people as almost anywhere this week. I think there's multiple people who are worth consideration, and you've named quite a few of the ones that I had down, but one that, I mean, I'm scared to go to, and maybe the matchup isn't phenomenal, but is Calvin Ridley. I mean, this guy's down to $5,600, and it's one of those, like, the talent is too big for $5,600, and they haven't been going to him. So, I mean, it's not like there's something there to say, oh, he's bound to pop this week. But man, it's crazy to me that he's at $5,600, though his performance has deserved it. But I think it's worth considering now that we're that low. It's that buy low thing again, right?
Right.
Another one we talked about, Heineke, is Drake London, only $5,500. I think if Heineke has a good game, it's probably mostly London and Pitts. I mean, not for Jonnu Smith, maybe.
Right.
But again, at $5,500, a number one receiver from a team that is going against a bad defense, I don't mind. Definitely Tyler Boyd, like you talked. Man, can you imagine the stack if Chase and Higgins are both out? And then you just stack Burrow, Boyd, and Irwin, and then you have so much money left.
Yeah, yeah. But honestly, that is how you can win, and that's why you got to. I mean, that's why an hour and a half before kickoff, you got to watch that stuff.
That's right.
That's how you can. Yeah, yeah.
It's a big one, man.
Yep.
JSN I had written down, and then the two others for me. One is Curtis Samuel coming back for the Commanders. He was getting a lot of usage before he got hurt. And I agree with you. I think they end up throwing the ball a lot this week. So I don't mind him at 3,900. I think he'll get some opportunity. And the other one for me is Tolbert on the Cowboys. Again, we're going to these like lower tier Cowboy guys, but 3,300. Yep. He's gotten some okay usage. Gallup's just fallen off the face of the earth. And it feels like Tolbert's almost stepping into that third receiver position here. So again, in a game where they should be scoring a lot of points and there might be enough to go around, I don't mind him at 3,300 either.
Yeah, no, I agree.
All right. Lots of good options there. Let's move on to tight end. We'll just take the whole thing at once here. Who do you want to look to play at tight end this week?
I think Laporta, if you are going to play Goff, I mean, and I have this lineup and it gets expensive with Amon-Ra St. Brown, but Laporta is just coming on. I mean, he's just playing, it seems, better and better and becoming more and more a staple of that offense. Obviously he has a favorable matchup in a game that could have a lot of points. So you can look that way. Dalton Schultz, the Bengals are the worst team at defending tight ends. So, you see Dalton Schultz and it shows opposition ranked 32nd. He had such a good game last week. It's like, can he duplicate that? I mean, the matchup's right, but sometimes you're just like, man, is Dalton Schultz good enough to back that up 2 weeks in a row? So I'm just a little hesitant, with that. I think for me, if I'm going to spend the money, I'm probably going to go up to Laporta because I think he's just a little more of a sure thing. You have to pay just a little bit more. But I would actually rather, if I'm not going to get Laporta, I would rather go the other direction and look at a guy you mentioned, a guy like Jonnu Smith, who is basically, for whatever reason, tight end one in Atlanta because they can't seem to get Kyle Pitts the ball. But Smith just keeps performing. The last month of the season, I mean, he's been great. So with Heineke playing quarterback, I mean, I think Smith is a great option at 3,600. I think Trey McBride at 3,500 again is another solid option because of the volume. I think especially they're probably going to be behind. We talked about that. They're probably going to have to throw the ball a little bit. So McBride's an option there. And then I mentioned Westbrook Akine there. I think Chig Okonkwo, this could be a game, and he's been very underwhelming for the Titans. But I do think this could be a spot for him at 3,000 if you need to kind of scrape the barrel. And then lastly, I sound like a broken record, and I hate this guy now probably more than you do, but Irv Smith, if some of these Bengals are out. Big Irv, at 2,700, if you're like, oh, I love my lineup, but I think you could take a chance with him. I personally would rather get up to like a Trey McBride at 3,500. I think it's worth that $800 to get someone who I think would be have a little higher of a floor there. But again, if Higgins is out, if Chase is out, or even if Chase isn't, if Higgins is out, I think you could consider Smith in this spot.
I'll allow it to stand, but I will never consider Big Irv personally.
I hear you, man. I hear you.
It's more of just like a personal moral stance at this point, more than whether he's a good player or not.
Oh God, he scored on my Bills the other night, and I'm like, of all the freaking people, like this guy, come on, man, like dude hasn't scored a touchdown in like 7 years.
Insult, right?
Yeah.
It's brutal. Yeah, man. So I just don't love tight end a lot this week. I basically have two, and they're both expensive. One is Laporta. I mean, this guy, I think he's getting to be up there where he's like one of those top tier tight ends.
He's Mark Andrews at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. In fact, I think I'd rather have him than Mark Andrews in the offense that he's in. So you always got to consider him in my mind if you can get to him now. The other one for me is Taysom Hill, man, and he's gotten expensive. but New Orleans is using him a lot. And I mean, this is not groundbreaking. Anybody knows this by now, but you're getting a guy who can run for a touchdown, can pass for a touchdown, could catch a touchdown. There's just so many ways that they're using him at $5,100. I mean, so I played him, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and my lineups didn't. I think I broke even that week, but it was mostly because of him. Like he got me a bunch of points that got me even to breaking even. So,
well, I'll just tell you this: I have 2 season long leagues that I play in. Not to bore you or anyone else, I ended up with Hawkinson in both of them. I like to try to get the same players, so I'm kind of rooting for the same guys.
Sure.
But and this was even before Cousins, got hurt a couple weeks ago. I had picked up Taysom Hill, and I'm like, I got to put Hawkinson on the bench. And I mean, Hawkinson is a top 5 fantasy tight end, and it's like. But to your point, it's like I had Hawkinson on the bench this last week and put Taysom Hill in, and it was like, you have to. So I hear you. I mean, kudos to the Saints for finally recognizing, I think we talked about it on Monday, their offense only seems to move when Taysom Hill is on the field.
Yeah, you said that on Monday. That's right.
The minute he's off the field, it's like they just stall out. So it's like, but kudos to them. They are finding ways to hand him the ball, to throw him the ball, to have him throw the ball. And I think you're right. It's like none of these guys, whether it's Laporta or Mark Andrews or Kelsey, none of these guys have the opportunities, so to speak, that Hill has, especially, you get down to the red zone. That's their guy. Like Hill's in on all those red zone packages. When they get down to the 5-yard line, he's coming in the game if he's not already in the game. And, that to me is like they're designing plays in the red zone for this guy, whether it's running, throwing, catching, whatever that looks like. So I'm with you on Hill. I mean, I think he's to the point where, because he's such an anomaly at the position, you almost have to consider playing him.
Yep, that's the thing. He's different than every other person who's listed at tight end because of how he gets used. So, all right, Yanni. Well, before we build a couple lineups here, I think we have a couple fun ones to build. Any thoughts on defense this week?
So I will say this: rarely, if ever, but I'm telling you right now, I'm paying for the Cowboys defense.
I knew this. I knew that was coming. I
mean, the Giants team total is set at 10.5.
It's too high.
That's it. I don't think they're going to go over. I don't think they're going over. So, I mean, if Dallas even remotely tries in this game, they're going to have 7 sacks. They're going to have 4 interceptions. They're probably going to get a pick 6 or something along the way. Like, this is the one week, and I think maybe one other week I talked about potentially paying up, and I don't remember who it was for. But I think, for me, I am paying up and spending the extra $1,000 to get Dallas's defense, because to me, they're as sure of a thing as any offensive player this week. And normally you can't say that on a defense. It's a lot more of a crapshoot, right? Last week, it's like the Colts get 2 pick 6s. Hey, did we know that was going to happen? Whatever. But I think with Dallas, like, you almost expect that this week. So I will pay up this week. I will sacrifice and take a Nick Westbrook, Akide, whatever it is, in order to get Dallas's defense here. So I'll just say that, if you want to go further down there's not a ton that I like. I mean, I believe it or not, I do like the Bengals, even though Houston's been, putting up a lot of points. I think we've mentioned it nauseum on this cast that we don't necessarily love Houston this week. I think in a home matchup, they have some potential here. And I do like the Ravens. They are a little pricey, but they're not as pricey as usual. They're still 4,000. I like the Ravens because I think that with the Browns lineup beat up, I think that they're going to get some sacks, some turnovers, but I'd rather spend the 4,400 and get Dallas if I'm going to do that. So I guess for me, it's Dallas, or maybe you drop down to like a Cincinnati or something like that.
Yeah. This is a weird week where I feel like I could make a case for the top at least 4 defenses. Yeah. With Dobbs going for the Vikings, who is very volatile, and we talked about him putting the ball on the ground. He definitely gives teams chances for interceptions. So I could see that being good. The Ravens you just talked about. I mean, the Seahawks against Washington, you got Sam Howell, who's on a historic pace for getting sacked. and they're throwing the ball all the time. So I think the Seahawks have plenty of chance. In fact, I think the Seahawks might have more chance to get sacks than the Cowboys do.
Possibly.
Just because the Giants probably run it. I mean, at some point, if you're down 30-0 too, are you really trying to pass or are you just trying to run the clock out, you know?
Right.
So yeah, and if you go down lower, I was just trying to think, what would I even recommend if I had to drop down for the sake of a lineup? And I think for me, it's the Chargers. It's a little bit scary just because we've talked about the Lions and the upside that they have offensively. But again, I guess what if I'm going to roll the dice there, it's just saying, hey, Goff doesn't always perform as well away from home. Maybe they're able to get a turnover here and come out with a respectable total, more so than those other teams that are at the bottom. I mean, if I got to pick someone at the bottom, I'm not playing the Giants, and I don't think I want the Jags or the Cardinals either. So
yeah.
All right, well, hey, let's build a couple lineups here, and just based on what we talked about, I would love to build out the Tampa Tennessee stack, like that game first, and kind of see where we end up.
Yeah,
it sounds like we'd rather start with Baker than Will. Is that true?
Your call. I mean, honestly, I don't know that I have a strong preference on either. I think both have a similar ceiling floor. So I mean, whichever route you want to go, I think I'd be okay with.
Yeah, and they're similarly priced, right? So
yep.
I'm gonna say we'd go with Baker. I'd be curious if his ownership would be a lot higher. But again, just because of how poor their run game is and the strength of Tennessee, that feels like, I guess, a little more of a sure thing to me that they're going to need to try to pass the ball. So we definitely want to go Evans, right?
I think so. Yep.
And then coming back the other way, do you want to start with like Hopkins or Westbrook-Ikine, or what do you think on the comeback there?
I think it depends on if we want to run back in that game. I mean, I think D-Hop is probably the way to go. I think, again, for me, a guy like Westbrook-Ikine or, Okonkwo, that's more of if you need to slot in a low price player. Now, if we want to put in Ikine now to see who we can, get that has some better bang, I mean, I'm good with that too. I'm fine with that too.
Let's try Hopkins and see where we get. I'm going to put in the Cowboys.
Okay.
And again, I'm kind of running off stuff that we talked about from the show here. So I put in Jones and Harris. So that tandem at running back that we talked about, I like playing them together depending on how a lineup works out. I'm going to put in Taysom Hill because I really like Taysom Hill. And that leaves us. So now we're at $5,400 a piece for a wide receiver and a flex is where we're left.
Okay. I always feel when you're in that mid 5 range there, my preference is to try to go bargain basement with somebody to allow, another big name into your offense there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's a guy, whoever you like at that Westbrook-Ikine price, whether it's Trent Irwin or Jackson Smith and Jigba, whoever you like there, and then try to leave some room for a solid flex.
Well, that would be. I mean, I like numerous people down there, like we talked about, but this goes a little bit to how you talked about if you were stacking up Seattle, you'd be willing to play all three. I wonder about just going ahead and throwing Westbrook-Ikine in there. You hope that Baker and Evans account for the passing points for Tampa Bay, but that it gets spread out a little bit on the Tennessee side.
Yeah, sure.
I don't hate that. Let's see where it leaves us. So that would leave us with 7,400 for a flex.
Okay.
You can get Tony Pollard there. That's the one that would stand out to me, unless, you could drop down to David Montgomery and see if you wanted to spend more money somewhere else. Anything else you're seeing there around that 7,400 price point?
Oh gosh, no, I'm just trying to see how do we get on Ross St. Brown is what I'm trying to say.
Well, let's try it. Okay, so we got to save $900 then.
Okay.
So we could come off of Hopkins, and then we just have Westbrook-Ikine from Tennessee. But that gives us 5,100 at receiver, which, Christian Watson's 49, or Boyd is 46, so that's in the neighborhood.
I guess my question is, would it be worth? I know we kind of had the logic of playing Aaron Jones and Najee Harris, but I mean, we don't have to play them together.
True.
Would it make sense to drop down from Aaron Jones off? You said we needed to save about 900. Is that where we were at there?
Yeah, so we'd have 5,600 for a running back, which gives you Madison or Robinson.
Okay.
The other thing we could do, I mean, if you're, I was just going to see what it does if you take both running backs out, then you're averaging 5,250. So you got to be on kind of, man, there's not much.
Yeah.
I mean, because I think you'd have to drop down to Algier from what we've talked about, right? On the other side of that, which, yeah, it gets you up to White. Who cares?
Yeah, that's not going to help. Yeah, that's not going to do much. So
let me check one thing here, just because I do like Mixon. I want to see what that leaves us with.
Yeah. Gosh, this is the downside to putting Dallas's defense in there is,
right.
You're sacrificing something here.
So, I mean, I guess it's what kind of long shot do you want to take versus stability? Because you could go, so we slotted in, we have Mayfield and Evans. Right now we have Hopkins and Westbrook-Akine on the other side of it. We have Taysom Hill at tight end, Amon-Ra St. Brown and the Cowboys, and then we're working on the running backs. This would be, you need something to happen, but you could take Mixon and then you could still get Dowdle at 4,300. So you're taking a shot on Dowdle getting some work that he hasn't necessarily gotten to this point.
I don't hate it. I mean, obviously it's a gamble because we don't know that he's going to get the work, but I mean, I don't hate it. If we had Algier as one, how much would we have left at that point?
Let's see. I think it didn't really get us to anything.
It didn't get us anything.
Yeah, 58. So it gets you to like White or Madison still there. I'd rather go back to Harris, I think, at that point.
Yeah.
And then that gets you like Madison or Robinson. You'd have your choice between those two.
I mean, I don't hate Madison or Robinson. I mean, they're not obviously great, but I think, you mentioned the workload for Madison. I mean, like I said, the Bears did run on that Saints defense a week ago. And I mean, Robinson, he's going to get some work. We know that. Now, whether he can be productive, I don't know about that, but he's going to get some work. I mean, I wouldn't hate. It's taking a chance if you go with Najee Harris and Madison. I mean, it's taking a big chance, but it allows you to have St. Brown. It allows you to have that Cowboys defense, Taysom Hill at tight end. So, I mean, you got some good ancillary things going there. I mean, you really need to hope, kind of what I said with Najee Harris happens, which is, he does have that kind of game of the year and he does get in the end zone. And, and then obviously with Madison, I mean, you just got to hope that that's a close ball game to where they run on the Saints and he gets enough volume and maybe punches one in. And so I don't know. That's a tough one, man. It's tough.
All right, here's the other thing that I'm looking at real quick, and we'll move on and see if we can do one more quick one. But the other thing you could do is you could pivot off the Cowboys, and then you could get Harris and Mixon, for instance, and have, that's 3,800 left. So it leaves you 100 short of those top four defenses.
I mean, do you hate the Steelers defense at 3,800? I mean,
no, I don't hate them for sure. We talked about how the Packers have been.
They're at home. TJ Watt should be able to get some sacks in that game. I mean,
Yep. No, that's fine. Yeah, there's just no other running backs in between there that I really like. So.
I mean, it feels better with Mixon because it just, he feels like a little bit more of a sure thing.
Right.
Especially if you're playing Harris, you've already got one question mark. Do you really want to have a second question mark in there? So I don't hate that. I could definitely live with that because, I think the Steelers are, heck, when you look at their average, they're averaging the same amount of points as the Ravens, more than the Seahawks. So, and they're playing the Packers. It's not like they're playing a juggernaut offense.
Right.
So
totally.
Yeah.
Well, I think my favorite there might be to leave the Cowboys in. And personally, maybe this is just the way that I like to play, but I'd be open to taking the shot on Dowdle to be able to get Mixon. I kind of like that pairing at running back, but
do that. And if the Cowboys are up big, hopefully he'll get, a dozen second half touches and make the most
and get something done. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
All right. Real quick here. I want to build out this with Purdy. Well, do you want to do Purdy or Geno? Which one do you prefer?
I mean, Purdy, we're basically going to go off the board probably, I'm guessing. Whereas Geno, I think, is a little more stackable, in my opinion. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know which direction you'd rather
Pick
go.
one, man. It's Yanni picks the direction here.
Let's do Purdy just because I think it'll be more
Sweet.
interesting. I think the Seahawks will be kind of bland because we kind of
Right,
already
like
know
you kind of
what
know
we're
what's
doing.
getting slotted in.
Yeah. Let's do Purdy and see what else we want to pair that with.
All right.
I know you like Debo. I mean, do we want to take the shot with Debo coming off the injury there?
I mean, I do like him, but that doesn't mean we need to take the shot. Personally, like it's mostly my bias based on that statistic about coverage where I wouldn't necessarily want to go to Ayuk in this game. But that doesn't mean we have to go to Debo either. Do you prefer to go to Kittle or McCaffrey or none of the above, or what do you think?
I mean, for me, I would probably punt on any of them and just play Purdy as a one-off here.
Okay.
Unless, whatever, if we have money left over for McCaffrey, I mean, I'm fine with that. But I mean, so running back wise, I mean, I think, I would actually probably go to receiver first because I think we had some stronger feels on receivers here. I don't know what direction you want to go there. I mean, I think that you can at least put one elite receiver in here, whether you want that to be, a CeeDee Lamb or whether you want to try to put Amon-Ra St. Brown back in there. I think in the last game, St. Brown and Evans are basically my two favorite, but we already have them in the other lineup.
Yeah,
so
right.
Yeah, I don't know if
that's okay. Sometimes let's just do it. Because the other one I was thinking about was going to that Seattle game and like getting Metcalf in there potentially.
Sure. And we could do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's start out. Let's do.
Why don't we take instead of Evans? Why don't we put Metcalf in for Evans and maybe go Amon-Ra St. Brown and Metcalf?
All right. We got Amon-Ra St. Brown and Metcalf.
Okay.
For now, I put in Jones and Harris at running back again. Obviously, you don't have to go there, man. But I don't know. That just struck me as like a nice pairing at running back for this week and affordable. So I don't mind it. We can come off of it if we need to.
Okay. What do you want to do tight end wise here?
For me, it's Laporta or Hill is where I'd want to go.
Do we want to mix it up and just go with Laporta here just because we went with Hill on the last one here? Do we want to have some variety? Okay.
Let's do it. We're going to have to get something cheap here.
Okay.
We're down to 30. I already put in the Cowboys, so we could come off of that too. But we're down to $38.50 per position, wide receiver and flex. So we're gonna have to go with like an Irwin, or we could. Let's see.
Just looking back here.
So we had at running back, it's tougher. Dowdle's way down there, but that's about it. At receiver, we did have some more that we liked. Okay, we had getting close. We had JSN, Samuel, Nick Westbrook-Akine, Tolbert, Irwin. Those were Boyd is 46, so that's getting a little more up there. But those are some of the ones that I have written down that we had gone to.
I mean, I don't know any of those. If you want to plug one in there, I think any of those are decent options at those price points.
Yeah. This one gets tougher because you got to play a couple bottom feeders here. So let's see. This isn't. Oh wait, I need to flip over to flex. I put in Samuel just because of the opportunity that he at least had before. That leaves us with $3,800. There's not anything right at 38 that I love necessarily.
And this is
flex, there anything you like there?
Is this flex?
Yeah, this is flex. Yeah.
No, I mean, he hasn't done anything the last 2 weeks. Leading up to it, Josh Reynolds is a guy that was putting up some points, but I mean, he's been quiet the last couple weeks, so I don't know that that's something we want to do. I mean, I think that was probably a one-hit wonder for Noah Brown there for Houston last week. So, oh gosh.
Is Nico Collins, his injury is not likely to keep him out? Is that
I don't
right?
think so. Yeah, I think I can go up here and look, but I don't think so.
Okay, because if it was, then it gets a little more interesting.
Yeah, so let's see. Well, it says he didn't participate in practice Thursday. So
that could be something to consider.
Yeah.
I'm gonna okay, I'm gonna come off of Aaron Jones for a minute
Okay.
because that's a place that we could save some money. And if we go to Algier instead,
Yep. Yep.
then we're up to 5,600 for flex,
Okay.
which
Okay.
probably gives us some more options.
So you got Ridley at 5,600 if
Tank
you want to take a
Dell.
shot with him. Yep.
I like Ridley, Tank Dell, Drake London. Those are probably my three favorites.
Yeah. I would be good with any of those. I mean, I think Ridley probably has the highest upside, but I don't know about his floor there. So I guess it depends on if you want to roll the dice with Ridley or, I mean, I guess none of those guys are a sure thing. I mean, Tank Dell is a big upside. Right. I don't know that he's, whatever. I would probably roll the dice with Ridley, unless you like London here. I mean, with Heineke, that's an option, but.
Yeah, no, I do like him, but I don't mind rolling the dice there. And if people listen to this, they can roll the dice with whoever they want.
Yeah, they can play whoever they want. Yeah.
So this ends us up with Purdy at quarterback, Algier and Harris running back, wide receiver is where you got to get some points, St. Brown, Metcalf, and then Samuel, Laporta at tight end, another one, Calvin Ridley and the Cowboys. I'd say after building those out, I like that first lineup.
The first one, it seems like when we do the first one, it always is a lot better. And I'm with you. I think
that we're like, what happened?
that first lineup definitely seems a lot better out of the two as I'm thinking about them for sure. For sure.
Yep. Agreed. Yeah. I think I'm going to be playing some version of that one. It's fun because that wasn't even playing a stack on that game wasn't really on my radar coming into this, but coming out of it, I like it quite a bit.
Well, I'm on the over on that game, so I hope that stack works out. We'll see.
I'd say I'll win the million, but I don't play the Millie Maker. But maybe I'll make like the 30,000, and you'll win your bet, and it'll be all good.
There you go. There you go.
All right, man. Well, thanks for kicking around. That was fun.
Yeah. Always, man. Good time, and hopefully those lineups will do all right.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Have a good week.